Welcome back to 7th Circle Gaming. Today on the channel we're going to be discussing Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance. Like the title card didn't give away that little mystery. So then let's move on, and we're going to talk about, as we always do here, full disclosure. Pause the video now and read through these, and let's jump in to Immersion. The game has earned 7.5 out of 15 for immersion, dead on average. And really, the game is attempting to immerse players into its world with seemingly two primary methods: presentation and challenge. The game, as we can see from the screenshot in the background, is presented through a third-person perspective. It's part of an established fantasy world with fairly well-known characters written by a well-known author. And combat is, again, it's fairly fast-paced, and that, in its own way, keeps players immersed into the game. The characters are given lines to speak, audio cues, and they're all seemingly based on their personalities from the books. So players who are familiar with the book series are going to recognize them and get more immersion value from that. Going to hear that line a lot in this review analysis. So the game also attempts to immerse players into the game world with statistics focus, as we might expect from this sort of game. Every object in the game world has some amount of statistics attached to it, and there is some immersion gained from examining and comparing those statistics against what the player currently has equipped. So, we've just talked a little bit about the game world, and here is that same screenshot that we've been seeing and we're going to see a lot without any text over it. We can see that the game is presented in that third-person perspective, as we just said. It's set in this sort of Western migration era Viking style fantasy that is fairly common and not at all unusual. The user interface is pretty simplistic and not, again, unusual for the genre. This here is just the hub world, so don't expect to see anything really outlandish here. So then, let's move on, and we're going to jump into difficulty. Because there really isn't much more to say about Immersion or the game world. The game is earning a 2 out of 15 for difficulty. As we just said, as you can see in the background, the user interface is fairly simplistic and appropriate to the genre. The difficulty settings and what those mean are not necessarily all that clear. And there really only seems to be one chance to set difficulty settings. Even looking through the settings menu, there wasn't anything that really seemed to affect that, although there might be. The primary difficulty selection is going to be this screen, and that pops up before embarking on any quest. And how players know whether or not they're actually overgeared or under-equipped, and whether or not that is set around a single-person quest or not is not necessarily made all that clear. Sort of play by or learn by doing. So then, let's move on. And we're going to talk now about Lasting Appeal. There is downloadable content for the game, adding in new characters. How much longer that DLC is going to be around and how much longer the active support is going to exist isn't necessarily clear. It is possible to play through the game with all of the different characters, and that's potentially going to keep players coming back to the game, especially if they have one or two that they're particularly interested in or familiar with. It is possible also to play through the game on different difficulty levels, which is going to keep players coming back to it. But where does that leave us? That leaves us with the final analysis, the last thing that we're going to discuss. The game has earned an average score of 4.1 out of 15, and it really seems to be geared toward appealing to franchise fans, that is, both of the Forgotten Realms book series and Dungeons and Dragons in general. The gameplay, on the other hand, if there is anything positive to be said about the game, it's that the gameplay is seemingly very simple. The quests do not take a significant amount of time depending on the difficulty level, obviously, and the combat is fairly fast-paced, 30 seconds of fun type combat. So, all in all, a 4.1 out of 15. Take that for what it's worth, especially fans of this particular genre and this particular series. Give it a look, and if you do have a game that you'd really like to see on the channel, comment that game below. Have you tried out Dark Alliance? Have you tried the downloadable content, the DLC? Comment that below, let me know. And that's really all there is to say about Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance. And goodbye.